Evening, everyone. A very good evening to all the dignitaries who've joined us on day 2 of the 5th edition of the Global Dialogue on Advanced Technology. The theme of the global conference this year is Innovating at the Frontier from Agriculture to Agribusiness. The whole idea is to find innovative solutions for traditional agricultural challenges, showcase such solutions from across the globe, and create a platform for dialogue on how these can be adapted in India. We had two highly curated sessions around soil and water management and farm monitoring yesterday. We also had the inaugural session for the conference yesterday with a lot of policymakers and experts. In the morning today, we had an Ag Life startup pitch session, and just before this, we had a session on mechanization and automation. The two sessions lined up for this evening are post-harvest and technologies and advanced biotech after this. Coming to this panel session on post-harvest technologies, we have a very interesting lineup of speakers from US, Australia, Italy, and Austria discussing their innovations. The idea is to provide knowledge on latest global developments and at the same time open up avenues for partnership with the Indian private sector where we see points of convergence. The panel will be moderated by Mr. David Gupta, Member Task Force on Post-Harvest and Logistics and co-founder and CEO Ecozen. Mr. Gupta, an IIT alumni with his team, transformed the way India handles its perishables by building the country's first ever solar cold storage chain and by providing intelligent solar pumping technology solutions. I would now hand over to Mr. Gupta to take this session forward. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Rolly. Very good evening to everyone. I think this is a global platform, so good morning to some of you folks as well. I think today's panel is really amazing. We have one gentleman who's probably awake almost at 3 a.m. in the night, and someone is already awake at 9 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, thanks a lot for my panelists who have really taken out a lot of hardship to make this panel happen. So I think I would want to start off by introducing my panelists, okay? So we have George over here, George Karner from Pixo Farm from Austria. And Pixo Farm is an application which is about estimating the yield and the quality of produce, which is coming out of the farm by using an app. As you can see, George has an app wherein in the background that image processing is happening on the tree per se. So that is what Pixo Farm is doing, which is quite amazing. Then I also have on the call with me, Thomas. Thomas has built a module which actually helps to keep the commodity safe against the microbial activity by releasing hydrogen peroxide. It's a very innovative mechanism, which I think you can add H2O2 based sachets to commodities and the microbial activity would get controlled. So very welcome to you, Thomas, to the panel. Also, I have Mr. Raja Ramchandran, who's the founder of ripe.io, and he's based out of USA. And we all keep hearing about blockchain and how blockchain can really play a role in ensuring that we have legit data and it helps in traceability and getting us confirmation around the food that we are eating. So I think Mr. Ramchandran would share with us more about it. And I think we have Emiliano joining us from Italy. He is the India account manager for VRV Solutions. And VRV has an interesting handheld analyzer, which is based on IR spectrometry. And it helps you get a quality sense of different commodities. So I think it's a very diverse panel and very different, interesting technologies. All at a yield estimation, quality estimation, quality retention, and traceability. So yeah, I think I'm quite excited about the panel. Before I kind of start off with the panel, I would want to maybe set some context with respect to the post-harvest management and the supply chain in India. So for those of you who probably are not aware about what I've been doing, so we've been working to build a cold chain enabled supply chain for perishables in India. And we have worked across various commodities like cherry, lychee, strawberry, coriander, and helping them move from one part of country to another. And based on that, what we have seen is that there are numerous challenges when you talk about the post-harvest management and quality retention and so on. I think we all are aware about the current scenario that there's a large part of produce which is having value loss. I think I've heard different numbers ranging from 16 to 18 percentage to 35 to 40 percentage of produce is lost, and the values being quantified at around $6 billion or $13 billion per se from an Indian context. Okay. And I think not all of this is because of the post harvest. A lot of it also is dependent upon the pre harvest, but there is definitely a share in terms of the way the post harvest handling is happening for this produce. So the opportunity in terms of leading to better post harvest management and helping retain that value is immense from an Indian context. And I think this is similar to many other developing countries as well. Talking a bit more about scenario, what we have seen in India today is that farmers, traders, aggregators who account for the major chunk of the volumes of the produce are focused more around running against time. So say they would prefer to rush the produce to the market rather than do the right kind of post-harvest management intervention. Okay, so say if we suggest them to do pre-cooling, they say 6 hours of pre-cooling is a delay for them. So that's the kind of challenge wherein people are more willing to not use cold chain and other post-harvest management technologies, but rush against time. Okay. What we have also seen is that cold chain and post-harvest management technologies are largely limited to exports and the negative temperature market, like frozen commodities, say frozen meat or ice creams and so on. Also, we have seen that largely the risk of commodities is undertaken by the off-taker or the end buyer per se. So whatever perishability happens, the farmers and the early guys don't really take a hit of that as much. If it is really bad on the farm level, then yes, they take a hit. But if it is going to get bad later on, the risk is with the off-taker who's actually taking the complete commodity risk. And because of these aspects, the intention to promote better post-harvest management technology is not really happened. Also, a challenge that we have seen is that people are more focused around not changing their operational practices. That if you go around the farm and tell them that, you need to change the way you are plucking the produce, it's a challenge to drive that kind of a change. So the solutions that we are trying to bring in have to be able to navigate those kind of aspects quite well. While these challenges are there, there's also a challenge of the kind of value they can get for the produce versus the amount of costs that they will have to spend per kg extra for different post-harvest management technologies. And I think last but not the least, there is an affordability issue as well. So if your product is, say, capital heavy, cost heavy, then we need to figure out financing models to actually make that work. So while I've spoken at length about the scenario and the challenges, I would also want to talk a bit about the opportunities. What we have observed is that if you're able to make good quality cold chain, we are seeing that the retailer losses are reducing, the logistics cost is reducing. We are seeing that the overall consumers are getting fresher produce and are willing to pay a little more for it. That is a positive trend that we are seeing. The other positive trend which is there is that the e-commerce industry is growing tremendously in India at this point in time. And a lot of players are deploying huge amount of capital to grow these food supply chains. And there's also a new thing which is happening is wherein e-commerce companies are looking at 10 minutes delivery to the consumers. So there you can imagine it would require more inventory closer to the consumer, more stocking, and hence better need of post-harvest management technology. Okay, there's also branded commodities play which is coming in. There are companies who are looking at branding the produce, packaging it properly, and providing it to consumers. Okay, so yeah, and maybe to give you guys some examples around how post-harvest management can add value, we are seeing in fisheries, some of the aggregators are using formalin. Okay, formalin to ensure fish doesn't rot when the ice melts, because in India we don't have frozen fish, we only have fresh fish. In case of apple, we are seeing there is pressure bruises, and cold chain can actually help reduce that by at least 10 to 15%. Then if banana is not actually pre-cooled before ripening, the ripening is not happening properly. So these are some of the value adds that we have seen on the commodity perspective as well. Okay, so I think there's a lot of value in the solutions that the panel is actually working on. What I feel is that also in terms of traceability, being able to map which produce came from which farmer is not there today. If we are able to build that and we're able to incentivize the farmers basis that can also be of a lot of value from a Indian perspective. So I think these are the few aspects around the scenario, the challenges, and the different trends and opportunities from an Indian post-harvest management and supply chain perspective. And I think we are at a very unique point because in terms of the overall technology, because of digitization and because of the new age startups coming into driving this change, there's a lot of money flowing in these aspects as well. So there's definitely a bit of technology adoption which is happening. So this seems to be a perfect opportunity to actually drive new age solutions into the Indian market. And yeah, I think with that, I would want to open up the panel for discussion. I think I would want to start with George. And George, if you could maybe quickly share with us about your solution and maybe share a use case of the same, it would be helpful for the audience to get a sense.
Yeah, sure. We'll start with my presentation here. Thank you for the introduction, Deb. I'm gonna quickly jump into that right here. You can see my screen now. Perfect. So, hello everyone. My name is Georg Connor. I am joining this great event from Vienna, Austria. I work at Pixelfarm, an AgTech startup that specializes in monitoring and estimating crop yield across many fruit types. Thank you very much for joining. I'm very excited to be part of this talk. So who are we and what do we do? Pixelfarm is a digital solution which helps fruit producers optimize their harvest by providing reliable yield monitoring and estimation data for apple, pear, and citrus fruit growers. Through the increased demand of healthy food, we empower fruit producers worldwide to ensure sustainable production and get the most out of their orchards. And we are viewing ourselves as an enabling technology. So we increase the efficiency of the whole fruit production value chain. So we start actually at pre-harvest technically, and we provide information all the way to post-harvest. Along the way, our solution was recognized by multiple juries of industry-specific events. For example, Pixelfarm was named one of the top startups at Fruit Logistica in Germany, and we won the Interpoma Startup Award in Italy. But we also won prizes in more general events like the Best Newcomer in Central Europe at the Global Startup Awards, or the Best Practical Solution at the Smart Agri-Food Summit. Last but not least, our many customers in over 15 countries across 4 continents are awarding us with their trust in our solution. Pixelfarm also has a strong connection to India. Roughly 6 months ago, we partnered with UPL, who became an investor in Pixelfarm. UPL is an India-based company that operates worldwide in the business of agro-inputs and biosolutions. And we are very excited to bring our solution to the Indian market as well. So what can you do with Pixelfarm? Starting off, you can count fruits on trees by simply taking a picture of the tree with your smartphone. This saves time and reduces the guesswork for growers. The smart algorithm even calculates the hidden fruits on a tree, so the ones you cannot see in a single picture. Secondly, you can measure fruits with the app by taking pictures of single fruits. This digitalizes an important process in crop monitoring for growers, displaying the size classes of their fruits and also the growth rates of the current season. And combining this data, we can calculate reliable yield forecasts for our clients using our AI and machine learning algorithms. Knowing volume and details of your yield ahead of time is a distinct advantage for producers. So this information is collected pre-harvest, but plays a role all the way along the value chain into post-harvest. Now, this leads me to the main focus of this talk, our post-harvest solution called the Harvest Bin Scan. With this tool, growers can take a picture from the top of full harvest bins and get insights about the contents of them. That would be, for example, the fruit count and the size class distribution per harvest bin. So right after they come off the trees, a worker can just snap a picture with their smartphone and get these results. Growers use this kind of information to optimize processes in marketing, sales, logistics, and sorting and storage. They can negotiate better prices for their products, be confident about the quality, optimize picking management, be sure to have the right packaging material available in the correct amounts, and organize shipments more efficiently. Having real-time data about the product available before it is sorted, stored, and shipped allows growers to improve procedures along the value chain. Pixelfarm also crunches the numbers for you and presents the data to you on the online dashboard, which can be accessed through a browser on any device. So all the data that's collected is also visualized and can be viewed by the manager or the users themselves. So now, being mindful of my allocated time, here I want to just quickly highlight the ease of use and the flexibility of a tool. You can set up very easily and at the same time be independent of external operators, since you can completely decide yourself when you want to go out and collect the data with your smartphone. So you don't have to wait for anyone else, you don't have to have these fancy devices. We really, also from a scaling point of view, just rely on the fact that people have smartphones these days. And with that, you can use Pixelfarm. And that concludes my presentation. Please check out pixelfarm.com and get in touch for more information. And I'm looking forward to the Q&A.
Thanks a lot, George. I think we'll move on to our next speaker. Thomas, over to you.
Yes. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time, and really appreciate being invited here today. I don't have a big presentation because the presentation of our product and the explanation is very, very simple. And here it is here. For those of you who can see it, it is a rather small sachet that is having quite a large impact on supply chains. This sachet has our patented formulation inside it. It is environmentally activated. So you place that via tape or our holding system within your storage and transit, so within the supply chain. It absorbs moisture, so it's environmentally activated. You dose the space for the requirement, takes in the moisture, breaks down the compounds. That creates a reservoir of low dose hydrogen peroxide that evaporates out of the sachet in the form of a reactive oxygen species. It goes into the space and breaks down microorganisms, penicillins, yeasts, molds, odors, etc., over time. So all the key fundamentals that break down fresh produce and create spoilage. So it helps to create safer, longer lasting produce. A sachet will last for approximately 30 days, will last for 30 days, and they benefit the most in transit and storage. So where you are taking commodities, where you need to grab them and you need to move them, whether it's in export across the country, in storage at the moment, sitting on a dock somewhere for months, the product will continuously work 24/7 to release the low dose hydrogen peroxide and to break down the disease and spoilage, bacteria, microorganisms, penicillins, etc., that exist. So that's the product in a nutshell. Where its application is being used now and where we see the value. In Australia in particular, as an example, we've got citrus customers that are seeing savings of 5% or more in some cases in just the pack house. So saving from being spoiled. So the last numbers we had were, I think it was 20 to 25 tons. That's big. That's rather a large amount of savings. That's produce that's not going into landfill. And we have other customers that aren't in post-harvest, obviously, but the value of putting low-dose, safe hydrogen peroxide vapor into your storage and transit to work on the everyday activities that occur, whether they're being brought into the space or they exist from the space from post-harvest, has seen great advantages. And our customers, it's difficult to always get dollars, but the value of saving 25 tons of citrus to be sold, so more marketable produce into more mouths and more markets is what we like to say. And that value depends, if you understand post-harvest, some produce is worth a lot of money Some produce is just a commodity and they won't spend any money on post-harvest technology. So you need to pick the high value commodity that has a longer supply chain journey. That's where you see the most out of a low dose acting hydrogen peroxide vapor generator, like our lovely ChillSafe product.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. I think it's quite interesting to know that they're able to save such a large percentage. 5% is a great number in terms of the overall savings. I think there would be definite benefits over the 5% as well in the freshness of the commodity. Okay, I think
the numbers get larger on the sustainability side, et cetera, depending on the seriousness of that. But they're the base numbers, and that's just in pack house. And that same company is now going to try it in shipping containers, the trucking, that they're convinced of the technology, and they're now going to apply it through the supply chain. So this was just in one pack house in the Riverland of South Australia. So
fantastic. Okay, I think we'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Ramchandran. Can you please share with us about ripe.io?
Great, thanks, Devendra, and appreciate the invite to be on this panel. Great ideas being shared already, so thank you. So RIPE, our mission when we started was to build trust and confidence in the sustainable food system. And that comes from understanding what actually occurs from seed all the way to consumption. And so, we have initially, used the technology blockchain to help capture data, keep it permanent, enable data privacy and data ownership attribution, and then ultimately enable a way in which companies can share that information to create a full digital record of that food. And so we've been lucky to have been named by Forbes as an innovative startup, Ag Funder, Rabobank, and Red Herring. And so we've been definitely been notable in the space. So where do we begin? We looked at really the disparate supply chain. It's an amazing set of actors and data and information and activity, but they're not connected. And so that fragmented ecosystem really lends itself towards how do you connect the dots? And so our platform, our SaaS platform, enables entities to go ahead and join and create networks or ecosystems for themselves. And the idea and some of the problems are that they just don't have much trust. And I think that goes from literally from farmer all the way to the consumer. And so you've got multiple parties in between that tend to be brokerage, warehousing, financing, and so on. And so the idea is to create better transparency so that you do have see-through all the way. Benefits to share that information on the common ledger, and you've got multiple parties. And so these are some of the larger problems that you probably have all heard of. And so in that sense, from a supply chain efficiency point of view, these are some of the things that people would like to take advantage of. And from our perspective, our customer is actually the entire ecosystem. In other words, anyone can become part of the network and then connect to their supply chain trading partners, whether it's a distribution company, a cold chain company, an IoT manufacturer, and so on. And many of the problems are, for the grower, they really need better supply chain participation. Manufacturers need accountable data become accountable for sustainability and proof of sustainability. Logistics definitely have inconsistent grower relations for products and so on, ultimately getting to the consumer to have trust. And so our products help solve it by, we have a tracker product that basically shows origin, the pathway for that food all the way to the point of whether it's a distribution center, trucking company, a cold chain, a warehouse, and then ultimately the retailer or even up to the end consumer. We've done some work in IoT that helps actually showcase what actually were the live conditions through that process. And in terms of quality, I'll give you an example. We actually work with a restaurant where we captured all of information from soil sensors to transportation sensors and actually spectrometers at the restaurant to identify the data that affects the flavor of a tomato. And so we've got an analytics tool that allows you to understand what happened in terms of things like harvest date. And then we also actually had live taste tests at the restaurant itself where people for a week or so would provide feedback and then post it within our flavor application. So this is what you can do with the data. And so in terms of post-harvest, this is what's actually important, so that if you collect enough data along the supply chain, you'll actually get something along these lines. Even a mobile app that allows you to quickly scan a QR code or whatever it might be. And again, this kind of information will come out, like where did it come from? What's the carbon intensity score, and so on. Again, these are all data points that we get. The other thing, our restaurant, for example, took the data. So talk about post-harvest, all of this information was actually placed on Instagram so that they can actually meet the needs of their customers. And they're very high information millennial type of customer, where this beet has a bunch of information about the seed that's placed there. We have sensors in the farm with this particular farmer, and then people want to know what gives it its particular beety, earthy flavor. Well, we sent it to a university to determine the chemistry of it, and geosmin is it. And so again, the point is that the blockchain is less about technology, but rather what's the output? What can you actually do with the data so that you actually create supply chain efficiencies, outputs such as like quality, proving sustainability, and today that's really where we're at.
Thanks a lot, Radha. I think it's quite interesting to see that you're able to tell the customers as to what compound is enabling their flavor. Okay. Very interesting. I think we'll move on to our last speaker, Emiliano. I think it would be, we'd like to hear about the spectrometer solution that you've been advocating.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. I would like, first of all, to explain a little bit the company. Viavi is an American company divided into business units. One is working on the telecommunication side, the other one is working on the optical coating side. So we come from the Oakley Optic back in 1994, where we started doing a special coating for glasses. When we talk about, let's go immediately to the point. When we talk about spectroscopy, we are talking about interaction between the sample and the light. In particular, the NIR spectroscopy is an interaction that is creating vibration on the molecules. And therefore, we can get molecular properties of our sample. With molecular properties, I classically mean moisture, protein, fat, acidity, or other parameters that are interesting for, let's say, harvesting and post-harvesting management of the sample. In particular, the advantage of the NIR spectroscopy are clearly that, and we will see an example, super easy to use because you don't need to do any kind of sample preparation. And therefore, we don't use any material or reagent, saving cost, saving time, but also saving, let's say, risk to the operator that are not directly in touch with the material. And actually, in a lot of cases, is more on the chemical market and the pharmaceutical market. We can work through plastic bag or even through the glass in order to avoid the contamination of the product. As I said, Viavi started back in 1948, years and years ago, as a coating technology group. And we developed a special filter called linear variable filter. The traditional way to make spectroscopy is that you take a piece of glass, you put a specific coating on this glass, and basically, depending on the chemical composition, depending on the thickness, you can have the polychromatic light, the white light, the solar light, the sunlight that is coming. And if you have a specific coating, you can have only one wavelength in the other side. But like this, basically, you do one wavelength per each filter. And it's very complicated when you need to create a absorbance spectrum of the material. Therefore, what has been done by us, we were able to create a special coating with a multiple layer that when the polychromatic light is coming, basically the light is able to be split automatically without any moving part. Therefore, we can dramatically reduce the size of the spectrometer and come down to something very miniaturized. For example, the one that you can see here in my hand, this is the original microneedle called 1700 ES, that is 4 centimeter, 64 grams, all in one. It can be connected, in this case, with a USB cable, and you can go directly to make the measurement in the field. A lot of advantages that are summarized here in terms of maintenance, because when you don't have any moving part, means that you have also a device that is super stable over the time. But starting from the small baby called the 1700, we have developed several solutions. In particular, this one that is the on-site W, that is the system that we offer when we need a certain level of portability. But we have also specific solutions like the stainless steel product that you can see here that are dedicated to process measurement directly online. This is a closer look of the on-site W. Is 200 grams, so it's super light, and it has a battery. It has a button that can allow you to start the measurement directly from here, but it has especially the Bluetooth communication. And the fact that we can enable a Bluetooth communication, it helps us to connect, yes, to a Windows computer, but we can also work with something completely different, that is a cloud infrastructure for data analysis. Therefore, you have a device, the on-site, the data are acquired using a mobile phone, and afterward transferred to the cloud, and afterward the cloud is returning the result directly on the mobile phone. I want to show you an example. This one is how it's operating on forage, for example. This is an application that has been developed for iOS, but it can also be available on Android. You do the basically the reference of the sensor, and afterward you can just touch your sample with a microneedle and get a real-time prediction on the screen. Clearly, the prediction in this case is related the Lucerne analysis, so the alpha-alpha analysis, and you can see here the list of the parameters. In a more general case, especially when we are talking about forage and feed material, you can see here a long list where we normally do all the chemical parameters like humidity, protein, fat, fiber, ash, and different kind of starch, digestible or not. But this is absolutely interesting, for example, for the case of the Lucerne, where you can, using an NIR, perform a grading of the Lucerne in order to define the price when the product is exported in another country. To make a long story quite short, basically there is a mathematical calculation that, based on a parameter that is called ADF, you can define the grade of the Lucerne and therefore the price of the material that you are gonna offer to the market. Few other examples. One classical example, quite common in India, but also in a lot of Latin American countries, is the sugarcane application, where with the same device and with a special adaptation, we can work directly on the stack of the sugarcane and really start from the harvesting to the crusher, to the press filter, to the fermentation, and to the final product that we can get. And we measure again classical parameter, classical chemical parameter like Brix, fiber, and total reducing sugar. This is another application that has been done in Mexico in collaboration with the local avocado association, where instead of taking the classical method where you need to take the avocado, open the avocado, grind the avocado or cut in small slice like here, put in a oven and measure the loss on dry, with the NIR in 20 seconds, you can get the dry matter percentage. And the beauty here is that clearly, if you put together the speed of the device and the possibility that everything in the cloud through a web app that you have on your computer, you can see all the devices in the field, and you can also map the different, let's say, wrapping level of the product spread everywhere. In a similar way, we can also do the total acidity on the agave to produce tequila. This is another Latin American application, but also we can work on mango. In this case, it's not with the on-site, but it could also be done with the on-site, where defining few sample position, we can scan the fruit and get chemical parameter, again, Brix that is connected to the sweetness, the dry matter, the total acidity, and is not pointed out in yellow by mistake, also the nitrogen content that is an important parameter to take in account. That's all from my side.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Emiliano. I think it's quite interesting to see that you were able to detect so many aspects which require invasive procedures normally to kind of conclude with respect to different commodities. Okay, great. I think with this, we will move on to the next part of our panel discussion. I think I have certain specific questions for each of you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Perfectly.
Okay, great. So I think I would like to start with George. George, we have seen that certain farms are quite big, okay, and would range from different acres, and a mobile phone is a small device. So how can a user go about mapping all the fruits in a farm by using a cell phone? Is that easy to do? Is that something which is scalable? Can you maybe share some light on this particular front?
Sure. So the most important point there is that you will not analyze every single fruit and every single tree. You will do a subset. It's a subset that's statistically valid for the entire block that you're looking at. It relies a lot on the fact that the blocks in agriculture are just treated the same way. The trees are of the same age, for example, of the same variety. So with that, we can just calculate from a smaller subsample for the entire block. So you don't have to really take pictures of each and every single tree. Of course, it also works with cloud technology. So once you take a picture, it's uploaded, and you don't have to worry about clogging your phone with pictures. Calculations are also done in the cloud.
Okay, got it, got it. My next question is for Thomas. Okay, Thomas, you mentioned that you get around savings of 5% for citrus. Could you maybe share as to, like, say, that 5% is some value, okay? What percentage of this value goes towards the product from a, an idea perspective?
Okay, so the percentage of product that I quoted is actually a percentage of product saved. So that product would have traditionally have been wasted and been discarded. So they look left where it should be. It wasn't there. It's right. It was a bit more sophisticated than that, I'll be honest, but that's the truth. So the value is definitely there. Now, where we have seen the genuine value with chill safe and low dose hydrogen peroxide, which is a way to work on diseases, fungus, whatever, in a slow and safe manner, is that the value continues over time. So you see it, and you'll see it from the beginning all the way through the end, and it's normally around 7+ days that you'll see that when you're using chill safe, what would normally start to turn and things would be the opposite way, they are not actually occurring. So where we see our value is 7+ days to 30, 40 days in storage and transit. It comes down to certain varieties and other things. But where we're very, very positive is we've got no moving parts. There's no AI. We're very low tech guys. Sorry, I get very jealous of the high tech. This is super low tech. It's everyday household product chemicals contained. And what that can actually do is work through the entire thing. So the value proposition is really that what we need right now, which is 7 days to 38 days. And you will get the value, and that goes all the way through the consumer. We've had, and as you all would know, as all the panelists would know, we've been going for 11 years. In the last only year, we are getting very serious, genuine feedback from our customers about the process going all the way to the home. So having that effect, getting ChillSafe in on the produce right as it's picked, all the way through to the supermarket, people are now saying, what's happened? Where's that product come from? What's the difference in that product to other products? And this is all new data. I love, we've a little bit of data tonight. Everyone's got data that was taking us a long time to get our data, because we have to have users, it's old school technology, users using it for some time to be able to gauge from them where the real value and benefits coming from. So we can genuinely say with a lot of happiness tonight, with everything that's come back, it's 7+ days, and it's definitely in storage and transit where people see the genuine value. And that is to those numbers I've quoted and higher. The average client will see, using our technology, a 10 times return on their initial investment. And the initial investment amount, because it's an enterprise product, we need to understand your supply chains to best understand how many and where and what is the genuine value. But that is what you will get. And that is for around about $1 a day is what the cost is. There is nothing that can compete in terms of inside of a shipping container or in storage and transit. When you look at all technologies, there is almost nothing in our, we don't think there's anything that can genuinely compete with that. So that is where the value genuinely can be. And we can charge a large space, 25 cubic meters that manages, or 50, sorry. And we've got a product that large as 25. You can fit a lot of fruit, a lot of produce, and a lot of, we do bakeries, we do pastry, we've got a whole range of food manufacturers that use it. But if you look at plastic or chemicals in the 25 cubic meters, a big bedroom, or 50 cubic meters, a big bedroom, then you've only got 120 grams of chemicals that is managing that space, reducing food waste for an entire 30 days. Look, we're currently getting our sustainability report done by somebody that's done the sustainability report for another big startup that's a unicorn. And I'm very excited to see what our sustainability number is based on 120 grams of household chemicals in a special formulation that work magically together.
Fantastic, Thomas. Mr. Ramchandran, like we all keep hearing about blockchain, and it's like a myriad concept for a lot of us. And there has been a debate that do you really need blockchain for traceability in agriculture? So I think my question to you is that if you could shed light around how the blockchain is really adding value over here, and what is the benefit of actually using blockchain to build such kind of a solution? And secondly, how is the blockchain actually being achieved? How is the data management happening such that the data which is going in the blockchain is ensured that it is authentic?
Sure. I mean, blockchain is really nothing more than an alternative database. I mean, today, we've been at it for almost 4 years, and we really don't even talk about blockchain anymore. I think part of it is the customer base. We're focused in the US. And so we've had a lot of larger companies, larger farming entities, and so on, test it out. And when it comes down to it, really it's the outputs or sort of the outcomes that you're looking for, whether it's, how do you prove sustainability? What's, give me a digital record so I can share it with my partners and so on. And so from our perspective, it's, it's a part of our stack of the platform, but it's one of many components. We've got data consumption, we've got a machine learning component, data management and so on. And so the blockchain really serves as a ledger to, permanently seal the information. I think, the question about blockchain and its utility comes down to this. I think with a public style blockchain, I think in its very pure form, it could serve actually as a great broad-based ledger that anybody could join and connect data and so on. And so really there is no central administrator to bias the information. But there's so many issues that we faced in terms of, well, how do I protect my information? How do I connect with other people there? Does mining be required? Is a token required? There's all these sort of questions about it. I think, when we started, there was really no appetite for that type of public style blockchain. Now, I think with, tokenization coming out, even NFTs and a whole host of things that are in the crypto world, that issue about a broad-based public style blockchain could come available. I also think it comes down to cost too. Our solution is a permission ledger. And so in some sense, there is a level of trust already embedded, largely because the actors know each other. But we also create a sort of self-sovereign identity so that the origin and the identity of the entity, as well as their land, the animals, produce, crop types, all of that's sort of registered onto our chain. And so from that perspective, really the value of blockchain comes down to it in and of itself doesn't necessarily provide value unless you join our network and then use that capability of track and trace, proving information. We have a huge data reference library that mirrors all the activity data attributes, the actors in the food supply chain space itself. So you need this application to sit on top of it so that he can organize all of it. Otherwise, it's just a wild west of data and a lack of interpretation. Data is data, but until you put some insight into it, you really don't. It's just a massive information. So from our perspective, I think that we've always thought countries outside of the first world, something like a public ledger could be really interesting because it represents potentially lower cost, a very low cost, which is necessary for places like India, Africa, even many parts of South America. But that still hasn't occurred. It's because the food business and the agriculture is so vast. It's quite hard to reach all those people, and so. So in that sense, I think, blockchain isn't necessary per se, but I do think that in a certain way it is. Largely, if you want to have an administrator-less, non-centralized entity, capability, then that's really where I think this becomes really important. I think that the needs for proving sustainability will really drive that notion of we need a distributed, non-centralized data capability so that people can actually verify, well, if I'm claiming GHG reduction by using less fertilizer or more curated pieces, or I've got cover crop and non-till and on, right? So you're trying to say all these things. The issue is, how do you certify and verify it all along the way? And then if you have a record that basically everybody looks at, you then have some ability to basically create a universal sense of trust and verification. And I think that's the future when it comes down to it.
No, I think that is fantastic. The sustainability angle, the climate angle towards food supply chain and making it less resource intensive, reducing the losses to abate the emissions. I think that is a very interesting angle. And I think over the course of time, even India is getting there in terms of its focus around sustainability and GHG reduction. So yeah, would be quite exciting to see how these technologies actually come in from India. I think coming down to Mr. Emiliano, so I think the solution is quite exciting. The thought over there is that it seems to be capital intensive. And when you look at an average Indian farmer, for them, the affordability of such equipment is a challenge. And they normally tend to look for more of service models or pay-per-use models. What is the thought of Viavi from that particular perspective to make the solution affordable and accessible to the farming community? in the Indian country?
But well, clearly, the NIR spectroscopy has evolved constantly from the traditional benchtop system dedicated to big research center or to quality control to something that is going more and more directly in the field. Clearly, the evolution that we can see is in the direction of having smaller device, low maintenance cost, low price, low cost of ownership in general. As a company, we are also investing in the so-called in the direction of the so-called consumer spectroscopy, creating special filters that are dedicated for very low cost application. Obviously, there is still to take in account that when you generate an analytical number that can be the moisture, the fat, the acidity, or whatever, you need to take in account that this has to be reliable, precise, and accurate. That is really a key point. Well, with the actual generation of the microneedle, we have, let's say, decreased dramatically the entrance barrier to the analytical market. But in the meantime, we have still performance that are absolutely, let's say, top level in terms of accuracy and in terms of capability to predict unknown sample. Obviously, this is the state of art. In the future, we can maybe make something cheaper, maybe integrated in a mobile phone, maybe something that goes, why not disposable, that can be connected directly to a fluid, maybe in conjunction with some other imaging software that could do direct analysis in the field. But absolutely, the direction is to scale down, to democratize the possibility to do analysis. Don't forget that one thing is the chemical analysis that I mentioned in my presentation. Obviously, there is another big topic that is the food authenticity, that very often the NIR is involved to see if a meat is frozen or unfrozen, if it's a fish is exactly that fish or is something else, because when you have a white fillet at the supermarket, well, it could be everything, you know. So to have the origin is a very important topic for NIR spectroscopy as well.
Okay, I think understood. So the thought process is to make the product more cost effective over the longer term to make it affordable for wider markets.
That's correct.
Fantastic. I think we are coming closer towards the end of our time. So before we kind of close, I wanted each of you to maybe share about the scale at which your solution is operating in the respective geography. Okay, and what are your plans to come to India, and how do you see your solution shaping up in the Indian market? And what kind of support or partnerships or anything that you're looking for? So I think we'll start off with the same order. George, yeah, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the presentation, we are active in over 15 countries now and 4 continents. Right now, we are dealing with the season in the Southern Hemisphere. So we have a lot of customers in South Africa, also Australia, New Zealand, and the South Americas. And then of course, with the change of the year, we're again building up for the Northern Hemisphere season, where also it makes geographically sense for us to be active in Central Europe. But also, of course, in the Americas, and as well as India is going to be very interesting for us. As I mentioned before, we're working with UPL. We can also there use their distribution network and use them for local support, language support, all of that. And scaling for us, of course, goes just through the smartphone devices that any user has. So that's how that would work for us. We are looking for local partners, especially in countries that are tricky for us to work in language-wise. Which might be as of now also India, and of course, especially in agriculture, having partners on the ground is always valuable to us. And of course, we're still vetting also for potential investors, so that is still also an open discussion.
Okay, Fantastic, George. Thomas?
Unmute. Okay, thank you for that. We are also in a similar situation where the product is being used in Australia, New Zealand, and several places around the world. We're currently still going through our regulatory process in some countries because we do have a product which is, I suppose, an old school product that has chemicals in it. We need to make sure that we can go through regulatory processes that can be approved. And we're doing that country by country as we need to. We can be deployed instantly, as you would understand, into the market. We can work instantly with anybody who has a need to protect or improve what produce they have in storage or transit. Our product is as simple as that. If you store it, you transit it, we can improve it, and we'll get you more marketable produce into more markets and more mouths, and we'll make that safer, longer lasting produce as well. No gags, no tech, just simple old school technology. We are looking for partners. We're always looking for the right partners, and we get approached, as you would understand, quite regularly. So we are very, very open to developing the right types of relationships, and we will look at those as they come forward with open arms. So if it's a product that interests you, then call out to us.
Fantastic, Thomas. So Ramchandran.
Yeah, we've grown to operate at scale, and we've got customers. Our primary focus is the United States, but we've got customers all over North America, South America, Australia, a bit in Europe, but we are not, we haven't expanded to places like Africa, China, India in particular, partly because we're a small startup and we just don't necessarily have the resources. But also we've been, in terms of our growth, we actually serve really large co-ops and membership-driven organizations like the National Pork Board, Dairy Farmers of America. And so in a sense, that's how our network grows, is that you prove it with an organization that already has members, farmers particularly, and producers. And then once they see the value in it, they adopt it. And so we're about to launch early next year a very, very large system that tracks sustainability information for pork producers in the United States. And so in that sense, we have scale. In terms of India, I think the hard part for us has been, where do you begin? I mean, it's so vast and it's so rural that things like traceability is probably a distant nice to have. On the other hand, listening to all the startups that have cropped up in terms of improving financing, particularly at the warehouse level and co-storage and so on, chain of custody might be a real opportunity, to place this sort of traceability tool. Also high value product like spices, for example, again, that relegates it to larger manufacturers that are export driven. But, we've talked to a number of different spice providers. So I do think that in the future, it's important for us to partner with entities there as opposed to landing and then trying to make a living, sort of figuring out how to navigate these markets. And so, we're certainly open to it in the upcoming year.
Okay. Fantastic. Emiliano.
Well, the situation is that we have introduced the first version of the microneer back in 2012. We have nowadays, we are a small group inside a huge company like the AVI, and we are developing a dedicated sales channel. Actually, we started in the beginning to try to have one distributor that is reliable for each of the big country. Now we are stepping up a bit, trying to find distributors that are active in a specific market segment, because clearly with a single person we cannot cover all the possible market. It's also true that India is a very complicated market, but super interesting in terms of number, and where developing the food quality and avoid fraud on the food and so on is really, really a hot topic that will become probably hotter and hotter in the near future.
Okay, fantastic. Rolly, how are we doing on the time?
Yes, we have around 20 minutes more, sir. We can go ahead with that. Couple of questions are there.
So do we have questions from the audience?
Yes, sir. We do have some questions from the audience. Can we take up, if you have
Yes,
permission?
I think we have time to do that.
Yes. The first question is to George Pixofarm. Amazing technologies, George, and great congratulations for our UPL tie-up. Do you work on the disease prediction model also? Because capturing pictures can be also multiplicated into that model also. So only onto the counting side of.
So disease detection or bruises, this would most probably fit into the post-harvest, the bin scan that we're doing, where you're actually getting a good snapshot, right? When a person is walking through the orchard and taking pictures to estimate yield, for example, the subset is too small to really reliably catch every disease pocket in an orchard. So for that, the solution is currently not geared for. But we're thinking about having basically a logging option where if you encounter a disease pocket somewhere, you can log it with Pixofarm, map it, and take the according measures there. So localize it this way.
Yeah, in countries like India, you see a wide range of megapixels of camera. You should be having any parameters for the camera, right? What should be the parameter of camera that is doable for best deductions or best counting of fruit for the yield prediction?
So we're saying any somewhat recent smartphone will work quite well. We usually compare ourselves here to Instagram. If Instagram runs well on your smartphone, Pixofarm will run well. So this is kind of the common benchmark we like to use. Of course, a better camera, a better phone will work a bit faster. We produce a bit nicer pictures, but we're actually downscaling most of our pictures anyway to a standardized file size. So with any somewhat recent smartphone, you will be fine in using Pixofarm.
Yeah, last question is there. Do you work with any other fruits or commodities other than citrus or round shaped fruits?
Technically, we're working on pears as well. Pears are technically not precisely round, but we're looking at the most round part of the bottom is the distinct feature we're looking at, which brings us, of course, then to developing for other fruit types in the future as well, right? But currently, we're looking at apple-shaped, round, or pear-shaped for now.
Yes. Roughly, what is around the cost economics per app or per user? It's a subscription based or something. What's the kind of economics for users in India or any other countries?
So it scales with the size. So with the hectares you're using it on. So there's a hectare price for each of the services that we showed. And we have yet to develop a country-specific pricing for India. But it scales with the size and with the hectares that a grower has. That's how it works.
Actually,
it's a yearly subscription, so you pay once per year. There's no automatic renewal there. You pay once for a year, and then next year you would go again.
Yes, in overseas we call it growers, but in India we call it farmers. So
Yes.
of course, there's a disconnect because of your size of land holding that we have in India. Thank you so much, George. Coming on to Tom. Or the question is that your chemical, you told that there are many regulations factors are involved actually across countries, right? When you work with export related to other countries. So do these chemicals are plant-based or it are synthetic chemicals that you use in your
they're everyday household. They're everyday household chemicals. They are the same chemicals that you use to absorb moisture from the air, damper, desiccants. We have two specific types of desiccants that we use to absorb the moisture at a rapid rate, to get it in, to break down our primary compounds, and to create that hydrogen peroxide within a 12 to 24-hour period, depending on the humidity in the space. And the humidity in the space in post-harvest, as you know, is high. You never get low humidity. It's impossible, even with the best technology. So we activate at 25% plus. It's 39% on an average day, 54% on an average day, and higher most places. So in terms of the chemicals, they're everyday household chemicals. The patentability, the secret, the novel, the excellence behind our product is the way in which they're combined. It's the way in which it's made, and then it's the way in which that reacts together to create the exact dose of hydrogen peroxide that will actually vaporize and create that reactive oxygen species that goes into the space and starts the work. So my co-founder, Dr. Gary Erickson, and the inventor is actually a PhD in chemistry and spent 20 years developing the formula. So this isn't, it didn't immediately happen. And what we love about it is that everyone goes, oh, it's so simple. It's a couple of chemicals in a sachet. Well, Velcro was very simple too. And a lot of people wish they invested in Velcro. So it is a very simple thing, but in the formulation and the way it works, it comes together.
Thank you so much, Tom. But the major questions comes on to the shelf life of that packet. What is the shelf life of the packet? If a ship is taking a very long duration from Australia to India?
It's not a problem. See, this is where we get the technical questions where it would require more of an understanding and whatnot in a shipping container. So it will last, we know, we've done all the tests, all the trials, we've had spectrometers, Emilio, we've used different technologies to see the vapor and see how long it lasts, to watch the ppm, the levels rise as the sachet is releasing, because it actually reaches an equilibrium in the space. The vapor will manage the space in itself, and it will only release as it's needed to go and attack a microorganism. Again, the science is just amazing, and it's very, very simple science, and the way that it works is fantastic. It'll last for the entire trip. It'll only release the vapor that's necessary. So if it's working really hard, it'll last the full 30 to 38 days. It will still last. If it's not working as hard, if it's reasonably clean, the container's clean, the produce is okay, then it can last longer. But I don't think you need to. I think the longest trip is around 38 days. We've been tested and tried and proven to be the product that's effective at 7 to that period of time, 7 days plus.
Yes. Last question to you. Have you carried out any Invivo in vitro studies? For example, by mistake, any friendly organism or any child or any human being take up the sachet or digest up something like that?
No. Well, if we did, we wouldn't have washing powder, because we only use washing machine powder as our secret ingredient, even though it's not that secret. It's a special type, but you put 5 times more of the active chemical in your washing machine than we have in a sachet. The Tyvek we use is medical grade, very, very hard to rip. That specialist Tyvek, and you know it's not the other version, it's the medical grade, and all the products are obviously approved to go in it. So it's very low risk for a child. A child shouldn't be anywhere near our product unless they are hanging out in a shipping container, which would be scary, to be honest.
What's the caustic on mix? For example, per kg or per quintal, what's the caustic on mix? One packet, how much kg?
How many kilograms will that protect?
Yes.
So we have 2 sachets. One sachet will manage 25 cubic meters, length by width by height. So full 25 cubic meters, one sachet, or 50 cubic meters.
Yes.
And they're both 120 grams of chemicals only for that time period.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. Next, we have questions from Viabi to Emiliano. What kind of associations you have in your Indian market as of now? And do you think service-based model also, because cost of such NIR non-invasive instruments is very high, right? If I'm not wrong. So what kind of service-based model is also there with you? You are...
Sorry. Yeah, I said the business model depends a lot from the market where we are going. I mean, there are different options. In some cases, we can come up with a pay-per-click where the customer is scanning, clicking the button and getting one measurement, or we can have a different kind of contract that they can be annual contract with a higher fee. It also depends a lot from the fact that you want also to see the result only on the mobile phone, or eventually you want to have the access to the full backend, so to the mobile app and to the web app, where you can get statistics, where you can get a bunch of information, including the geolocalization of the measurement that has been done. It's hard to say one single thing. Anyway, we have a partner in India that is ATS, and I suggest to contact them for further details.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emiliano. A last question from Mr. Raja. You understand the dynamics of your country, but you are born and brought up a bit of time in India. What are your dynamics? What you with your experience? What do you think that what's the disconnect, or what is the connect that you see when India can actually take up these technologies, traceability with QR code scanning, farmer databases, and the complete background history of the farmer, which is complete from agri value chain, from grower to your consumer. Do you think that we are ready in India and we are doing that?
Well, sadly, I think I'm disconnected from India. I think I've been in the United States for so long. My associations are all from we've got a lot of employees that are Indian. And so I learned quite from them, about Indian agriculture. I think, to a large extent, sort of the first world countries are still reliant upon industrialized agriculture. And so, the stratification of the consumer level is very based on price in some sense. And so in order to achieve a very competitive price, you have to create mass amounts of food. And so therefore your processing and the way in which you farm and package and so on is meant for incredible high volume so that you can meet, retailers' demand and consumers' demand for low cost food. And unfortunately, in some sense, one of the consequences of that is really a bad lack of nutrition. And so on the other hand, I'd say that the global movement of people have really increased the ethnicity of this country in terms of its demographics, in terms of, say, the US, and therefore the variety of foods have vastly increased. Now, in terms of a place like India, it's so rural in some sense. It's that I'd say the average farmer probably has a hectare of land. And so they're very much beholden to how it is that they get supply and the speed in which they deliver that. And then, and so they need better financing. So at a very basic level, it's really more about, well, how do you increase your ability to serve, maybe larger markets when you're a small farmer. So if that's the aggregation of the bulk of sort of ag in the country, because it is so rural, then as far as sort of how America is at a grocery store is really, I'd say, proliferated throughout. I'd say Europe is actually quite a leader in this space about how a grocery store actually puts together, more sustainable, more knowable food. And I think that in India, my guess is that the consumer has a much more specific need and more immediate need. I think that's why you're seeing, vast growth in delivery services. It really, that's an old school Indian thing where you had Adobe come in and deliver. Now that's actually all, it's an e-commerce business. And so financing is probably a very important piece, faster payments. Certainly this notion of sustainability is high on the mark here, but really it's such early stages, no one's committed to it. So, I think that where the United States is in terms of a digital food system is still super early days, let alone I'd say China might be having some. India being a digital food system is, I think, a long ways. It's not to say that it shouldn't, because part of the telecommunication infrastructure is there, right? 30 million, folks have cell phones in terms of the farming community. So I think the opportunity is there. It's just really, is the cost there? Is the consumer ready for such a thing? Is there government mandates or government encouragement around it? So I think, in the end, you can't avoid 1 billion plus people, as a marketplace, but is the infrastructure ready for such a thing?
Thank you so much, Mr. Raja Ramachandranji. I would request Devinder sir, please, some closing remarks from your side.
I'm traveling home from office.
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, just one last question from my side, Shivam, to all the panelists. I think this is going to be a quick one. So I think all of the technologies that we've spoken about over here are cutting edge and latest in their fields. While these technologies may be expensive today, or may not be for some of you, But in future, we all see that with scale, it will reach a particular point wherein they are going to be quite viable, affordable, and so on. So I would like to maybe any like you guys to put in a number that in future, maybe say 5 years hence, what do you see as cost per kg of your technology? Okay, so whatever food is being processed through your traceability value chain, or whatever fruit or food is being mapped up by PixelFarm app, or wherever we are deploying cool sands sachets, or the spectrometers is being used by VRV, what do you feel would be the longer term optimized cost per kg of each of these? I think that would give a sense to the audience and our farming community that, you know, this is what the longer term cost would be in terms of if we are moving towards these technologies.
Yeah, so the cost per kg is actually a super valid KPI for us as well. Here in Central Europe, we are in the ranges of, I think it's 0.001% per kg or something that you are using it on one block of apples you get, and this will be the range that we want to target for the other markets as well for, right? And so we have to just see how we can do adaptations in pricing, but also, of course, as also the other panelists alluded to, the infrastructure, and there's also a big point: is everyone ready to install this kind of technology and get going?
So I think I heard 0.0001 euro cent per kg. Would that be the right number?
So basically how we calculate it is that the price per kg of apples by using PixelFarm, like the cost they have to produce it, increases by 0.001%.
Okay, by 0.001%.
Yeah.
How much would be your number?
That's a very, very good question. On the spot, it's an exceptional question. In 5 years' time, it'd be difficult to say. We obviously see our costs coming down, and as we're scaling and we're growing, we're producing more sachets that are coming down in price. We don't know how much further we can come down at around $1 a day to manage 25 cubic meters. You can fit a substantial amount of produce in 25 cubic meters, and that's why we've caught the ire of so many sustainability companies. But at that price, it would really come down to the produce you are storing, but it's around $1 a day to manage that amount of space. So I don't know what cents it would be, but it would be a very low cost. And in export, you're looking at only 2 sachets for a 20-foot container and 4 for a 40. So in terms of a 30-day journey, there isn't anything on in the market that you can put in a shipping container to give you that protection at that value. So
I think
hopefully a couple of cents only.
Even if we assume it to be maybe say 10 tons in a 25 cubic meter space, I think the cost would be $0.0001.
It'd be very, it's very, very low. As I said, we started this process of understanding where we see sustainability. We've looked at how much we've saved: 25 tons, 1 pack house of oranges, 50 liters of water for 1 orange, 25 tons, 55,000 liters. There's a lot of numbers, but yeah, managing 25 cubic meters of, say, blueberries in Western market right now, 25 cubic meters of it, the price would be nothing. I would say free. Yeah. Very cheap in 5 years.
Ramchandran, over to you.
So, I mean, we already have a pricing structure where we charge either a flat fee for a SaaS for usage of the product, or we charge via data transaction record. So our transaction fees are as low as 3/1000ths of a cent per pound, or 50 cents a head of cattle, pig, whatever it might be. And so in the next 5 years, I imagine that's going to drop pretty drastically depending on volume. So ultimately, you know, we consider this to be a very, very low impact and low cost to any participant on the system.
Fantastic. Emiliano, What would be
Well,
your
seriously speaking, I never done such a kind of calculation, but anyway, consider that the cost of ownership of the NIR sensor is pretty low. Clearly, there is an entrance bias, but it depends on the product. It depends from, let's say, the value that the product has. So it's quite hard to quantify with a single number. But again, it's not going to be more than few cents per kilos, I guess, but this is a good feeling. I never done a serious calculation on it.
Okay, fantastic. So I think we have come to the close of the time, and I think we learned about different technologies, starting from pre-harvest to tracking the quality at the time of harvest, and traceability across the supply chain, and also managing the harvest. I think there is definitely a potential wherein VRV spectrometer can integrate with Pixofarm's app to track quality. And I think Ramchandran's system can actually take up all of this into a traceability app for consumers. And I think Thomas can go about targeting users of all of these three to provide his app, to provide his sachet-based solutions. I think the great time that we see is that a lot of these agri technologies are coming in, and the way we can actually collaborate together to really deliver better post-harvest management. If you would have noticed the kind of value addition, which numbers we have heard from different panelists over here, we're talking about significant savings in terms of produce. We're talking about significant improvement in terms of the quality of produce, the confidence on produce being delivered to the consumers. And as we've all heard, that the costs are like 0.001%, if I may quote George, and probably 0.001 cent, if I may quote Thomas, per kg, and which is almost nothing. So I think a time wherein we are able to take these technologies to the Indian context, it can be affordable even in the Indian context. I think it's about figuring out the right set of partners, the right set of customer segments and the commodities to start off with. And I think 5 years hence, we would love to see all of these technologies in the Indian market. So yeah, I think that would be broadly all from our side. Over to you, Roli and Shivam. Thanks a lot, everybody, for being a fantastic panel.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.